Jamal wiped the sweat off his forehead, adjusting the straps of his camera bag. The heat was suffocating, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and moss. Trees loomed over him like silent giants, their branches forming a green canopy that filtered the sunlight into spears of gold. He cursed under his breath. This was supposed to be a quick hike, a detour to grab some wilderness shots before heading back to the city. He had parked his rented Jeep just off the trail, confident in his GPS and his sense of direction. Both had failed him. The GPS had lost signal 2 hours ago, and now every path looked the same. Trees, ferns, silence. The deeper he went, the less familiar anything felt. Even the birds had gone quiet. "All right, Jamal," he muttered. "You're not the first black man to get lost in a European forest, but you will be the first to make it out without dying in some dumb horror story." He forced a laugh, but it echoed back at him like a mockery. His name was Jamal Carter, 32, African-American, a freelance photojournalist who had been traveling through Eastern Europe for a personal project titled Vanishing Borders. He'd captured war-scarred villages in the Balkans, crumbling castles in Romania, and even a secret rave in an abandoned Soviet bunker. But now, none of that mattered. He was alone. The forest was endless, and the sun was beginning to dip behind the trees. He checked his phone again. Still no signal. The battery had dropped to 18%. He slipped it into his pocket and trudged forward, trying to follow the faint sound of running water. A stream might lead to a road, or at least something alive. Branches snapped behind him. He froze. Silence. He spun around, raising his camera like a shield. Silly, he knew, but instinct was instinct. The forest stood still, unmoving, nothing but trees. He let out a breath and turned. A soft humming drifted through the air. He stopped. It was faint, like a lullaby carried on the wind. The melody curled through the trees, almost impossible to place. It wasn't in English or French or anything he recognized. It didn't sound recorded. It sounded alive, human. Jamal hesitated, then moved toward the sound. Maybe someone was there, a local, a Canber, anyone who could point him back to the trail. The humming grew louder as he pushed through the underbrush, thorns scratching his jeans. The forest darkened around him, not just from the fading light. Something in the air felt different, thicker, heavier, like walking into a dream that hadn't been meant for him. He stepped into a small clearing and stopped dead. There, lying in a makeshift wooden trap covered in vines and leaves, was a girl. She wasn't moving. Her long hair, silvery blonde and tangled, fanned out like moonlight on the dirt. Her skin was pale, almost too pale, and her dress was torn at the hem. But what struck Jamal most was that she didn't look surprised to see him. She looked calm, as if she'd been waiting. "Hey," he called out, stepping closer. "Are you okay?" Her eyes opened, deep green, eerie and clear. She blinked once, then smiled. "You came," she whispered. Jamal took another step, heart pounding. "What happened to you? Are you hurt?" She shook her head slowly. "No, just caught. But you're here now, so I'm free." He frowned. "What?" The girl sat up with strange ease, the vines falling away like they had never been tied. She looked at him as if memorizing every detail of his face. Then she said, very simply, "You just saved me." Jamal raised his hands. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but—" "You saved me," she repeated, standing now. Which means— A pause. The wind stopped. "You're my husband now." Jamal stared at the girl, speechless. The forest around them was so quiet, it felt like the world had stopped breathing. "You're what?" he finally asked, his voice cracking. The girl tilted her head slightly, as if confused by the question. "My husband," she said again, with the calm certainty of someone stating the weather. "You saved me from the trap. That means the binding is complete." "The binding?" Jamal repeated, frowning. "Lady, I think you hit your head or something. I didn't sign up to be anybody's—" A low horn sounded in the distance, deep and ancient, like it had been carved out of stone and blown by a ghost. Jamal's blood turned cold. What the hell was that? "They're coming," the girl said, stepping closer. "The elders will want to see you. The forest saw what happened. The binding is real. You have to come with me now." He backed up a step. "The forest saw what? Girl, I was just trying to help someone out of a trap. I'm not trying to get married in the middle of Narnia." She blinked again. "You're not from here." "No, I'm not. I'm American. Just visiting. Lost, actually. And I really need to find my Jeep and get the hell out of—" "You can't leave," she said simply. "Not now. Not after touching me." Jamal opened his mouth to protest, but another horn sounded, closer this time. And then, footsteps. Dozens of them, crunching through the underbrush. He turned. Figures emerged from the trees, cloaked in dark green and brown, their faces shadowed by hoods. Men and women, old and young, all moving in an eerie silence. They surrounded the clearing in a perfect circle. Jamal instinctively raised his hands. "Look, I don't know what's going on here, but I didn't mean to trespass. I'm just lost." A man stepped forward, taller than the others, with a wooden staff in hand and a white scar running down the side of his face. His voice was deep and gravelly. "You touched the bride of the forest. You freed her with your hands. This cannot be undone." "I what? I didn't know she was a bride. I thought she was injured. What kind of medieval cult—" "Silence," the man said, though not angrily, almost respectfully. "The forest chose, and you answered. You are now part of the song." "The what?" "The song of the woods, the binding rite. Life for life, touch for touch. You saved her. Now you belong to each other." The cloaked figures bowed their heads in unison. Jamal turned in a slow circle, his pulse racing. This had to be a joke, a weird Eastern European forest prank. Hidden cameras, maybe? He half expected someone to jump out and yell, "Gotcha!" But no one did. Instead, the girl stepped forward. "My name is Illyra," she said softly. "I was trapped for a long time, cursed to wait until someone brave enough, or foolish enough, came through this forest and saved me. That person is you. So now—" she reached for his hand, "you must come with me before the forest changes its mind." Jamal hesitated. Her fingers were pale, delicate, warm despite the cooling air. "You really believe all this?" he asked. Illyra gave the faintest smile. "You'll believe it soon enough." He should have run, should have turned and bolted into the woods, found a road, found a phone, found reality. But something in her voice, not fear, not warning, but certainty, kept him rooted. The horn sounded again, this time closer, urgent. Illyra looked into his eyes. "If you stay here, the forest will take you. If you come with me, I can protect you. And maybe you can protect me too." Jamal exhaled. He took her hand. The figures opened a path, and together they walked into the forest, deeper than before, where the trees grew older, darker, and the air shimmered with something he couldn't name. Behind them, the clearing closed like a gate, and the forest whispered, "He
is hers now.
Jamal followed Lyra through the thick woods, the air around them growing colder with every step. There was no clear path, no trail, no footprints, just trees that seemed to part slightly for them and close behind like curtains. The forest no longer felt wild. It felt aware, watching, breathing, waiting. He still held Alira's hand, not because he believed her, not yet, but because he didn't know where else to go. Every rational part of him screamed to turn back, to fight, whatever this was. But something deeper, some instinct beneath all his doubt, told him not yet. After what felt like an hour, the trees gave way to a small valley, and what he saw made him stop in his tracks. There was a village. Dozens of wooden houses with moss-covered roofs nestled in a gentle slope, stone paths, smoky chimneys, a narrow stream snaked through the middle. It looked ancient, untouched by time. There were no cars, no wires, no satellite dishes, nothing modern in sight. Just old-world stillness. And people. Dozens of them, all dressed in earthen tones, their clothes homespun and strange. Some stared openly at Jamal. Others bowed their heads respectfully as Alira passed. Children peeked out from behind wooden fences. No one smiled, but no one screamed either. Alira didn't stop walking until they reached the largest house at the far end, a circular structure with a thatched roof and symbols etched into the wood like vines. She opened the door and stepped inside. Jamal hesitated, then followed. The interior was dimly lit by candles and smelled faintly of pine and something herbal. Alira motioned for him to sit on a cushion near the center of the room. "This is the seer's house," she said. "He will explain what I can't." "You mean that Scarface guy from before?" She nodded. "Elder Varun. He keeps the old knowledge. He remembers the bindings." "Yeah, about that," Jamal said, sinking onto the cushion. "Let's say I did accidentally marry you. How do we undo it?" Alira didn't smile. "You can't undo what the forest has sealed." Before he could argue, the door creaked open again, and Elder Varun entered. He removed his cloak and sat across from Jamal. Up close, the man's scar was even more striking, a jagged white line across his right cheek that looked like it had been burned into him. "You have questions," Varun said. "I will answer only what you are ready to hear." "Okay, then explain this. What is this place? Where the hell am I?" "You are in Ilyar, a village older than most maps. We live between the waking world and the deep woods, hidden, protected, bound to the old ways." "Right, the old ways. Great. So I'm guessing y'all don't do Wi-Fi." Varun didn't blink. "You mock what you fear." "I don't fear it, I just think this is insane. I came here to take photographs, nature shots. I wasn't trying to stumble into a wedding." Alira sat beside him, quiet but listening. "The forest has its own designs. Alira was part of a vow. Long ago, when the storms came, her family promised the life of their first daughter to the forest in exchange for protection." "You were given away?" She nodded slowly. "I was a child. I didn't understand, but the curse grew with me. The forest sealed me into its heart. Only the one brave enough to enter and touch me would break it. And then be stuck with you. Bound to me," she corrected gently, "through choice made in instinct, not ritual. That is the truest kind." Jamal ran his hair through his hair. "I'm sorry, this is all too much. Look, I'm sorry if I messed up some ancient curse thing, but I need to leave. I need to get back to civilization." Varun's expression darkened. "You cannot." "Try me." The elder stood. "Men who reject the forest after it gives them a gift do not walk out unchanged. The last one tried. The roots swallowed him whole. The forest keeps what it claims." Jamal stood too.
I'm not a gift. I'm a guy who got lost. This is nuts. Silence fell. Then Illyra spoke, softly. If you stay, I can show you the way out. In time. Jamal turned. You just said I can't leave. Not now, but if you trust me, if you really want to leave, I will take you, even if it kills me. The fire crackled between them. Varun's voice dropped low. She has offered you more than any before. Consider that. Jamal looked from the girl he had accidentally unmarried to the man who spoke in riddles. He was exhausted, confused, hungry, and completely out of his depth. And yet, a small, irrational part of him whispered, what if this is real?
The wind outside howled like it carried voices. Jamal sat alone on a bench just outside the circular house, staring up at the crescent moon peeking through a break in the clouds. The stars above seemed unnaturally bright, not like the city skies he was used to, but raw and vivid, like the universe was watching. Inside, Illyra had gone quiet. She disappeared into another room after her strange offer to help him leave, or die trying. Elder Varun had left not long after, muttering something about preparations. He had no idea what that meant. He tried his phone again. Still dead. Of course, he muttered. Batteries down to 5% and no bars. I've officially entered the horror movie zone. The worst part? It didn't feel like a horror movie. It felt ancient, weighted, like everything he was experiencing had happened before, many times, and would happen again with or without him. Footsteps approached. He turned. Illyra stood in the doorway, barefoot and quiet, wearing a long white robe with ivy leaves woven through her hair. The moonlight lit her face in silver. She was beautiful. Not in a polished magazine cover way, but wild, hauntingly serene. She looked like she belonged to the forest. Jamal stood slowly. What's going on? She stepped closer. The village will perform the binding tonight. I thought the binding already happened when I touched you. That was the claim. This is the consequence. Is this a real wedding or just a ceremony? She looked at him for a long moment. Does it matter? He swallowed hard. Yeah, it does to me. Illyra hesitated. It is both. A ritual that ties two souls under the forest's eye. It is not legal by your world's rules, but here it is the strongest vow two people can make. And if I refuse to do it, you'll be an outsider forever. The forest may tolerate you for a while, but eventually it will turn, and you will not survive. Jamal rubbed his face. So my options are marry a forest bride or get swallowed by evil trees. She actually smiled, just slightly. I didn't ask for this either, but I believe there is a reason. He looked at her, really looked, and saw something unexpected. Loneliness. Not manipulation, not madness. Just a girl who had spent years trapped by something bigger than her, now standing in front of him, hoping he might say yes, not because he had to, but because he chose to. The village bell rang once, then twice, then 3 times. A signal. Illyra extended her hand again. If you're willing, come. Jamal's heart pounded as he took it. The villagers had gathered in the central circle of the village, surrounding a large tree with white bark and glowing roots. Strange symbols had been carved into its trunk, ancient letters that looked like they had been scratched by claws. A fire burned in a stone pit nearby. The flames danced higher than seemed natural. The people began to hum, not words, but tones, a harmony that vibrated in his chest like a forgotten lullaby. Illyra led him to the center. Elder Varun stood before them, holding a staff carved with 2 intertwined figures, man and woman, tree and vine. Speak your truth, he said to Illyra. She turned to Jamal, voice soft but steady. I do not know you, but I know what it feels like to be lost. If the forest brought you here, then it was not by accident. I will not bind you with chains.
But if you stay, I will stand with you. Varn looked at Jamal. And you? He hesitated. His brain screamed, Say no! Walk away! This is insane! But his soul, the deep, tired part that had seen too much pain, too many fake people, too many empty streets and hollow cities, whispered, Maybe. He looked at Elira, and he said, I don't know what this is, but I'm here, and I'm not running, so, yeah, I'll stand with you too. The villagers exhaled in unison, like a sigh of the woods itself. Farin raised his staff. I call upon the forest, ancient and alive, witness this binding, sealed in the flame, carved in the bark, sung in the wind. From this night they are one. The tree behind them pulsed. A faint glow ran through its roots, spreading like veins across the ground. Elira stepped forward and placed her forehead gently against Jamal's. Her voice was barely a whisper. Thank you, husband. Before he could answer, the fire flared, and the forest sang.
Jamal woke to the scent of pine smoke and something sweet. Wild berries, maybe? The first thing he noticed was the ceiling, wooden, low, and carved with swirling symbols like vines wrapping around the beams. Morning light filtered in through narrow gaps in the wall, soft and golden. He blinked. This wasn't a hotel. This wasn't a tent. This wasn't anything close to normal. He was in a bed made of woven branches and moss-stuffed linens. His boots had been removed, and a woolen blanket covered him from chest to toe. Then he heard the sound. Quiet humming. He turned. Elira was seated on a short stool by the wall, weaving strands of thin bark into rope. She had changed out of her ceremonial robe and now wore something simpler, a green tunic and loose, earth-toned pants. Her hair was braided loosely over one shoulder. She looked calm, peaceful, like this was the most ordinary morning in the world. He sat up. Did I seriously just get married in the middle of a cult village in the forest? She looked at him and smiled slightly. You didn't have to say yes. I said I'd stand with you. That's not the same as signing a lease and sharing a Netflix account. She tilted her head. What's Netflix? He rubbed his face. Exactly. Elira stood and walked over to a small table where a wooden bowl sat, filled with water and pieces of fruit. She handed it to him. Eat. You'll need strength. He accepted it warily. Why? What happens now? She sat beside him. Now we wait. For what? For the forest to accept the binding. What does that mean? She looked down at her hands. Sometimes the forest changes its mind. He froze with a piece of fruit halfway to his mouth. What? She didn't elaborate. He set the bowl down. Okay, no offense, Elira, but I need answers. Real ones. What are you? What is this place? And what the hell does accept the binding mean? Elira met his gaze, and for the first time since he met her, there was hesitation in her eyes. Not uncertainty, but the weight of a story too old and too painful to be told lightly. You remember when I said I was cursed? Yeah, something about your family promising you to the forest? She nodded. It wasn't just my family. The entire village once made a pact. Hundreds of years ago, this land was dying. Drought, disease, war. The people here prayed to the old spirits, and the forest answered. With what? A bargain. Protection in exchange for blood. Every generation, one child born under the new moon would be offered. Not killed, kept. Given to the forest's will. To become something between human and spirit. A bridge.
And you were that child. I was born under the blackest night. No stars, no sound. The midwives knew, my parents knew. They tried to run, but you can't run from roots. Jesus. She said, I was raised by the elders, trained to speak the forest's tongue, taught to hear things others couldn't. Then, when I turned 17, I was taken to the heart tree, the one you saw, and sealed in the trap, waiting for what? For a stranger, one not of this land, one with no roots here, no history, one the forest wouldn't be able to control. Only he could break the binding and let me live again. Jamal shook his head. Why would the forest make a curse and provide the cure? She gave a sad smile. Even gods get lonely. He didn't know how to respond to that. Outside, the wind shifted. Birds scattered. The light dimmed slightly. Illyra stood up. It's time. For what? To see if it accepted you. She opened the door and stepped outside. Jamal followed her hesitantly. The village had gathered again, this time in silence. No ceremony, no singing, just rows of solemn faces, all facing the heart tree. Elder Varun stood near it, his hand pressed against the bark. The forest has spoken, he said. Jamal braced himself. The binding holds. There was no cheer, no applause, just the deep, collective exhale of an ancient village that had been holding its breath for too long. Illyra turned to him, her expression unreadable. You're not just my husband now, she said softly. You're part of this place. The forest won't let you leave so easily. He stepped back. That wasn't the deal, she said. There was no deal. There was only the song, and now it's written in you too.
That night, Jamal couldn't sleep. Even with the fire crackling gently beside him and Illyra curled up on the opposite side of the room, a thick tension hung in the air, the kind that made his skin itch and his thoughts spiral. He was married to a girl he barely knew, in a village that wasn't supposed to exist, and now, apparently, the forest had accepted him, whatever that meant. He lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about the words Varun had spoken. The binding holds. It sounded like a verdict, not a victory. When he couldn't take the silence anymore, he got up quietly and slipped outside into the night. The village was asleep. Lamps glowed faintly behind shuttered windows. Owls called from the trees. The moonlight painted everything silver, making the wooden huts look like something out of a dream, or a memory that didn't belong to him. He needed answers, real ones, and that meant finding something older than ceremony and tradition. He remembered what Varun had said before, that someone else had come once, another outsider, and he hadn't made it out. Men who reject the forest after it gives them a gift do not walk out unchanged. Jamal followed a narrow path behind the heart tree where Illyra had told him the village stored its artifacts. A small, lopsided building stood half hidden by vines. The wooden sign above the door was so weathered it was unreadable. He pushed the door open. The smell of dust and old parchment filled his nose. The room inside was a sort of archive, shelves upon shelves of strange objects, carved bones, wooden masks, old tools, bundles of dried herbs. But in one dark corner, stacked high and forgotten, were books and journals, their spines cracked and worn. He pulled a small lantern from the wall and lit it with a flint striker nearby. The warm glow revealed faded titles, most written in languages he didn't recognize. But one journal stood out. It was bound in black leather, modern, with an American flag sticker peeling off the cover. Jamal's heart skipped. He opened it. May 17th, Day 2. I think I'm lost. The forest path just disappeared. There's no signal, and I haven't seen another human in almost a day. If I don't find help soon, I'll have to backtrack and pray for luck.
May 19th. Found a girl in a net trap. Thought she was a lost local. Turns out she's the village bride or something. They say I claimed her. No idea what that means yet, but they're acting like I'm their new king or sacrifice. May 21st. I'm scared to write this. The trees are moving, not just in the wind. I woke up last night and they had circled the house. The bark was humming. May 22nd. I tried to leave. I followed the creek like the girl told me, ended up right back in the village. But it was hours later, like I lost time. She says the forest is testing me, says I have to accept the binding. But I never agreed to this. May 23rd. She's beautiful and strange and so alone. I think part of me wants to stay, but I also think that's the forest talking. May 24th. I'm going to try again. I can't stay. I'm not theirs. I'm not hers. If someone finds this journal, please. The entry cut off. A deep scratch ran through the page, as if the pen had been ripped from the writer's hand. Jamal's fingers tightened around the edges of the book. This man, whoever he was, had gone through the same thing. Same forest, same girl, same binding. But he hadn't made it out. And if the journal ended this abruptly, the forest keeps what it claims. He felt cold suddenly, despite the lantern's warmth. Behind him, the door creaked. Jamal spun, heart hammering. Alira stood in the doorway, barefoot and silent, her eyes unreadable in the lantern's flicker. "You found it," she said softly. "You knew about this," he said, holding up the journal. "You knew someone else came before me, and you didn't tell me. I didn't want you to fear what hasn't happened yet." "He died, didn't he?" "I don't know," she said after a long pause. "He disappeared into the forest. I never saw him again." "And how many others before him?" She didn't answer. Jamal took a step back. "What am I to you, Alira? Another test? Another offering?" "No," she whispered. "You're the first who stayed." "That's not comforting." "You chose to stay. The forest didn't make you. You touched me because you wanted to help. That matters." He looked down at the journal in his hand. "Does it?" "Yes," she said. "Because I think you're stronger than he was, and because I don't want to lose you." Jamal looked at her. For a terrifying moment, he didn't know if he was looking at a girl or something far older wearing her face.
Jamal didn't sleep again that night. He stayed up watching Alira from across the room, the journal still clutched in his hand like a lifeline. She had returned to the woven bed and curled into the blankets without protest, her back to him, her breathing slow and even. He couldn't tell if she was truly asleep. He wasn't sure it mattered. Outside, the wind rustled the trees like whispers too soft to understand. Jamal sat in the corner beside the dying fire, knees drawn up, heart heavy with questions he was no longer sure he wanted answered. Why him? Why now? What happened to the others who didn't belong? And why was he still here? At dawn, he slipped outside into the cold morning mist. The village was quiet again, but not in a peaceful way, more like it was listening. Every footstep he took felt like it echoed down into the ground, deep into roots he couldn't see. He didn't know where he was going until he got there. The heart tree. Alone, it looked even larger than before. White bark streaked with green veins, its trunk covered in curling glyphs. As he stepped closer, he could feel the air change, thicker, charged, like walking into a storm that hadn't broken yet. He placed his hand on the bark. It was warm, alive. And then, like lightning through his spine, a voice. Not words, not language, but emotion flooding through him, like a memory not his own. Loneliness, hunger, longing, betrayal. Jamal gasped and pulled his hand away. The forest wasn't just watching him, it was feeling him. And worse, it was trying to speak back. Footsteps behind him. He turned sharply.
Elder Varun stood a few paces away, cloak drawn tight around his shoulders. "You felt it," the old man said simply. Jamal nodded. "What is it?" "The forest is not just trees," Varun replied. "It is old magic. Wild. Older than any god we've ever named. It remembers everything, every vow, every broken promise, and every soul it's ever touched." Jamal looked at the tree. "It's not just keeping us here, it's feeling us?" "Yes, and it has become selective." "Selective?" "Once it welcomed anyone. Outsiders could come and go, and the forest gave its wisdom freely. But that time is gone. Now it wants roots, not visitors. It wants permanence, loyalty, obedience." "Slavery?" Jamal didn't flinch. "Perspective, perhaps." Jamal folded his arms. "And Alira? She's its puppet?" "She is its daughter," Varun corrected. "Made in its image, shaped by its power, but not owned. Not anymore." "She said you cursed her." Varun nodded. "We did, out of fear, out of need. The village was dying, and the forest demanded blood. We gave her. She became the bridge between our world and the forest's will. She should not have survived." "But she did!" "She did, and for the first time there was something like guilt in his voice. And now she's something the forest cannot quite control, just as it cannot control you." Jamal stared at him. "Why me? Why not someone else?" "The forest doesn't think in names. It chooses by feel. You are not from here. You carry no blood debts, no oaths. You walked in with a stranger's eyes and touched the forest without fear." "I was trying to help a girl." "Exactly. No bargain, no demand, only instinct. That's what it recognizes." Jamal looked back at the heart tree. "And what does it want from me now?" Varun's gaze was distant. "To stay, to root, to belong. But if you resist, it will twist. It will make you part of it anyway. Bark, bone, memory. Forever." Jamal backed away. "That's not a life." "It is survival," Varun said grimly. "And to the forest, that's enough." A gust of wind swept between them, and for just a moment the glyphs on the heart tree glowed, faintly, but undeniably. Something had heard them. Varun looked sharply at Jamal. "Whatever you do next, don't lie to it." Jamal frowned. "Lie to the forest?" Varun's eyes narrowed. "It listens even when you think it doesn't." Later, Jamal returned to the hut. Alira was awake, brushing her hair with a wooden comb. She didn't look surprised to see him. "Where did you go?" she asked softly. He set the journal down on the table beside her. "To find the truth." "And did you?" "Some of it." She nodded, not pressing. After a pause, he added, "The forest doesn't own you." Her hands froze. "No, but you're still bound to it." She met his gaze. "And now, you are too." He didn't respond. She stood and walked to the window, looking out over the trees. "I dreamed last night. You were leaving, and I couldn't follow. The forest wouldn't let me." Jamal stepped closer. "If I tried to leave now, would you stop me?" Illyra turned slowly. "No, but it would."
They started planning the escape in whispers, not in the open, not near the trees, not even within reach of the window. Jamal and Alira sat close together in the corner of their hut, behind a curtain of firs hung to block out sound, or at least that was the hope. "The forest hears things," Alira said, her voice barely a breath. "Not just through wind or birds or branches. It listens through memory,
through what you feel, not only what you say." "That's comforting," Jamal muttered. "So we have to outsmart a psychic tree god." She gave a faint smile. "It's not a god, just very old and very proud." Jamal glanced over his shoulder, though no one was around. "So what do we do?" Alira leaned in. "There's a time when the forest goes quiet, between dusk and full dark, only for a few minutes. It's the moment when the sun fully disappears and the stars haven't claimed the sky yet. During that shift, the listening weakens." Jamal raised a brow. "And you figured this out how?" "I've been watching for years, listening back. There are patterns, pauses, moments of inattention." "Sounds like a glitch in the system," Jamal whispered. "I like glitches." "If we go then," Alira continued, "there's a chance we can make it past the ridge. That's the threshold. Beyond it, the forest no longer controls the path. But we'll have to move fast and quiet and not look back." Jamal studied her face. She was calm, far too calm for someone plotting a rebellion against the thing that had raised and imprisoned her. "What happens to you," he asked, "if we make it out?" She hesitated. "I don't know. I've never been more than 2 miles from the heart tree." "Will you die?" "I might forget everything, or I might become something else." "That's not an answer." "No, but it's the truth." Jamal exhaled. "Then I guess I'll just have to hold on to you and remind you who you are." That got him a real smile, quiet but grateful. They spent the rest of the day pretending to gather berries, pretending to help repair one of the bridges over the creek, pretending to be calm, to be one of them, to belong. The villagers still watched Jamal like he was both savior and threat. Elder Varun said nothing, but Jamal often caught the man glancing toward the trees, as if checking whether the forest was thinking. By twilight, the plan was set. They packed almost nothing: a flask of water, a cloth satchel with dried bread and roots, a curved blade Alira had hidden beneath the floorboards. "Don't use it unless you have to," she warned. "If you draw blood near the trees, they'll smell it. They like blood." "Yeah, okay, definitely not comforting," Jamal muttered. As dusk began to fall, they waited by the rear edge of the village. The path to the ridge was narrow, half overgrown, and led through a part of the forest no one ever walked at night. They watched the sky. The sun disappeared. The stars had not yet risen, and the forest paused. Now! They ran. Not blindly. Alira led the way, fast and sure-footed, as if she'd been practicing this moment in her dreams for years. Jamal followed, heart pounding, ducking under branches, leaping roots, feeling every shadow tighten behind them. They didn't speak. They didn't look back. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then, halfway to the ridge, a sound. Not footsteps, not animals. A voice. Not human. "Where are you going, daughter?" Alira froze. The voice came from everywhere, from the trees, the ground, the wind, even the very bark beneath their hands. Jamal grabbed her wrist. "Keep moving." But her eyes had gone wide, her body trembling. "You belong to me," the voice said again, deeper now. "And he belongs to you. He was mine the moment he touched you." Jamal yanked her forward. "We go." Alira shook out of her paralysis and ran again. The trees began to move, subtly at first, then with unmistakable intention. Branches twisted unnaturally, vines uncoiled, roots shifted like snakes. One reached for Jamal's ankle. He jumped it just in time.
The forest was waking up, and it was angry. They burst out of the narrowing path and into a clearing just below the ridge. Alira pointed to a narrow break in the tree line. "There! That's the threshold!" The voice screamed now, not words, just fury, ancient and raw, shaking leaves from the canopy, making the ground pulse. Jamal and Alira sprinted the last stretch, hearts thundering, lungs burning. As they crossed the threshold, something snapped, like a rubber band pulled too tight and finally let go. Everything went silent. No wind, no movement. Just two people, gasping, standing on the other side of the trees, with nothing but still air between them and freedom. Jamal turned to Alira. "We made it." But she didn't look back. She had dropped to her knees, and her eyes were full of blood. "Alira!" Jamal dropped beside her, grabbing her shoulders as she swayed forward. Her lips were pale, her breathing ragged, and her eyes... God, her eyes were red. Not just around the edges. The whites were flooding with crimson, veins blooming like flowers under glass, streaking toward the center like cracks in porcelain. "No, no, no. Hey, stay with me." Jamal gently shook her, panic tightening his voice. "Look at me. Don't go quiet. Not now." Alira blinked slowly. "It's too soon." "What is?" "I wasn't ready. I wasn't supposed to leave." "You did leave. You're here. We made it. We crossed." But even as he said it, he could feel it. The forest wasn't gone. It hadn't let go. It was just waiting. He looked behind them. The trees stood still, innocent, unmoving. But he knew better now. He could feel the gaze, the pressure, like something enormous was leaning against an invisible wall, watching. "She crossed the line," it seemed to say. "But did you think that would come without cost?" Alira coughed, a wet, awful sound, and crimson stained her chin. Jamal's mind raced. "You said leaving might change you, but you didn't say it would kill you." "I didn't know," she rasped. He pulled the satchel open and grabbed the flask, lifting it to her lips. She swallowed weakly, some of it dribbling down her chin. He wiped her face, his hands shaking. "This is my fault. I pushed us out. I made us run." Alira smiled faintly, barely there. "You saved me." "You're dying, Alira?" "No." Her hand reached for his. "Becoming." Her fingers were cold, but not lifeless. And then she went still, eyes open, body motionless, like something inside her had left or been pulled away. "No, no, no, damn it!" Jamal's voice cracked as he cradled her. "Don't you dare fade on me! Don't let that forest win!" He looked around. No signs of civilization, no village, no trail, just open highland brush and hills ahead, a landscape that might lead to freedom or nowhere. Then, movement. From beneath her skin, veins twitched. Light, faint and green, pulsed along her arms. Jamal stared in horror as thin, hair-like roots pressed just beneath the surface of her flesh, as though the forest had planted seeds inside her years ago, waiting for the moment she tried to leave, and now those seeds were waking. She gasped, her back arching, her body convulsing. "No! Stay with me!" The roots twitched again, then slowed. Stopped. Her breathing settled, and when her eyes opened, they were no longer red.
They were gold. Not glowing, not monstrous, just deeply, unnaturally golden, like sunlight trapped behind glass. "Illyra," he said, his voice cracking. She looked at him, and for the first time she didn't seem confused or afraid. She looked free. "I'm here. But the forest? It's still inside me." He helped her sit up. "Is it controlling you?" She shook her head. "No, it's listening, but I'm louder now. You pulled me through the threshold. That never happened before. Not with the others. Not even the first one." Jamal stared at her. "Wait, the guy from the journal? He made it this far?" Illyra hesitated. He reached the line, but he hesitated, and the forest took him back. Jamal exhaled. "So what now?" Illyra looked toward the horizon. The trees behind them didn't move, but Jamal knew this wasn't over. Not yet. "I'm not just its daughter anymore. I'm something new. Half-rooted, half-free. And you." She reached for his hand. "You're the only one it didn't break." He nodded. "Then we keep moving. But we're not just running now. We're changing something. The binding broke when we crossed, but the song didn't end." "The song?" "It's still being written. By us." Jamal stood, pulling her to her feet. And as they walked away from the edge of the forest, the wind behind them sighed, like a breath held too long.
They walked for hours. Illyra's steps grew steadier with each mile, though her golden eyes still flicked toward the forest behind them, sensing something Jamal couldn't. She hadn't spoken much since the transformation, or awakening, or whatever the hell it was. But she held his hand the whole time, fingers warm, steady, and alive. Jamal didn't press her for answers, not yet. He wasn't sure he was ready for them. The land beyond the forest was strange, not empty, not wild, but carefully untouched. The trees ended suddenly, as if trimmed by an invisible boundary, and the hills beyond were wide and rolling, dotted with gray stone markers and plants that looked cultivated, but no farmer he could imagine. Near sundown they reached a ridge. Illyra stopped without warning. Jamal nearly walked past her. "What is it?" She didn't answer. So he followed her gaze and froze. Below them, nestled in a low valley between two hills, was another village. But this one was different. Stone buildings, not wood, torches, not candles, flags bearing the image of a stylized tree, a twisted trunk with golden roots. People moved in rigid formations, clothed in black and gold, their movements precise, practiced, almost military. At the center of the village stood a tower, tall, spired, carved from obsidian stone, and wrapped around its base were roots, not decorative ones, real ones, living ones, pulsing slightly. "Oh, hell no," Jamal muttered. Illyra said nothing. Jamal turned to her. "You know this place?" "I've heard whispers, in the leaves, in dreams. They call it Andros, the Keeper's Village." "Keepers?" "They worship the forest from the outside. They weren't born of it like my people. They serve it, study it, try to control it." Jamal looked back down. "You mean these people want to tame the thing that nearly killed you?" "No," she said. "They want to become it." He stared at her. "You're not serious." "I am," she said. "These are the ones who mapped the outer songs, who found ways to cut roots without angering the trees. They're scholars, fanatics, dangerous. And they're right in our path." Illyra nodded. They made camp that night in a stone alcove a mile from the village, hidden by overgrowth and shadow. Illyra remained still most of the evening, staring into the fire Jamal built from dry brush. When she finally spoke, it was low, careful. "If we go around, we'll lose days, but if we go through, they'll recognize you," Jamal finished. "Or worse," she said, "they might recognize you." He frowned. "Me? Why?" "Because you're not just some outsider anymore, Jamal. You broke the binding. You crossed the line. You touched the forest and lived. That makes you more valuable than they'll understand." Jamal exhaled slowly. "Great. So I'm some kind of mythical forest husband now." She smiled faintly. "To some, yes." He stared into the flames. "If they try to stop us—" "They won't," Illyra said. "If they see us." They exchanged a look, and in that moment it was clear. They wouldn't run. They would go through Andros. The next morning, cloaked in a stolen shawl and dirt-smudged clothes, Jamal walked beside Illyra along the south road that led into the village. No one stopped them. No one even looked twice. At least not at first. But then, just as they passed through the arched gate, a bell rang. One note. Low. Vibrating. Illyra froze. Jamal turned to her. "What is it?" Her eyes were locked on a carved slab near the entrance, a black tablet with glowing letters etched into the stone, and above those letters, a symbol. The exact shape of the heart tree, its branches twisting into a crown. "It knows," she whispered. "This place is connected. We never left it behind." And then came the voice. Deep. Cold. Not the forest, but a man. A human one. "You carry the mark." Jamal reached for Illyra's hand. She didn't move. Her eyes were glowing again.
The room vibrated with silence. Not noise, not wind, just pressure. As if the Codex Varen had exhaled something none of them knew how to name. Jamal stared at the burning symbol on the floating page, the eye ringed by thorns. It pulsed softly in the dim chamber, its lines twitching like a living thing. "Explain," he said, turning to Alzek. "What is it?" The archivist stepped carefully around the pool, robes brushing the stone floor like silk on bone. "We've only seen fragments, symbols, echoes in the codex, old names lost to time, before the forest, before the first binding. It calls itself Irith Kale." Illyra's brow furrowed. "That name doesn't come from the forest's tongue." "Because it predates the forest," Alzek said grimly. "It was buried deep, in the silence beneath the roots. Some say it was the reason the forest awoke in the first place, as a shield, a barrier." Jamal shook his head. "So we didn't just cross a line. We cracked something open." "Yes," Alzek said. "And Irith Kale has begun to see through you." He turned to Illyra. "And through you, it may speak." Jamal took a protective step in front of her. "She's not anyone's conduit." "No," Illyra said softly. "But maybe I was meant to be." Jamal turned sharply. "What the hell are you talking about?" Her golden eyes met his. "The dreams, Jamal. Even before I met you, I saw things. Cold stone halls, symbols in blood, a voice calling from beneath the forest's roots. I thought it was the forest itself, but now I'm not so sure." Alzek nodded. "The forest was only ever half the truth. What lives beneath it is older, deeper, and now it wants out." Suddenly the codex shuddered, pages flaring outward as if caught in a storm wind. The symbol of the thorned eye blazed bright. And then it spoke. Not aloud, not through sound, but through every part of the room. Through the floor, the air, through Jamal's skull. "You left the door open. You crossed the threshold. You broke the pact. You brought the seed of change into dead soil. Illyra gasped, clutching her head. It's in me! It's inside! Jamal caught her before she collapsed. Her skin was burning, not hot like fire, but alive, vibrating with something that didn't belong to flesh. Alzik raised a hand toward the codex. Silence! But the voice laughed, a low, ancient sound like stone dragging against stone. You caged the forest. You crowned your gods. But I remember when you knelt, and I do not forget. With a final burst of light, the codex snapped shut and slammed back into stillness. Silence. Then a sound from outside. A bell, not from the tower, but from the village gate. A warning bell. Moments later, a guard burst through the doors. Archivist, you need to see this. They raced to the top of the tower. From the balcony, the entire valley was visible, and what they saw turned Jamal's blood cold. The forest had moved. It hadn't just expanded, it had shifted. Roots erupting from the earth miles from the tree line, dark tendrils snaking toward the valley as if the trees themselves had jumped forward in time. It was no longer content to wait at the edge. It was coming to reclaim what it had lost. Illyra gripped the railing, her expression unreadable. It's not just angry. Jamal looked at her. Then what? Her voice was quiet. It's afraid. Alzik's face went pale. Jamal turned to him. You wanted us to stay. Now we don't have a choice, so tell me, what can we do? The archivist hesitated, then finally spoke. There's a way to reach the source. A root so old and deep it was buried beneath stone and sealed with fire. It predates the forest, and possibly even Irith Kale. It may hold the key to ending all of this. He looked at Illyra. But only she can survive the descent. Jamal stepped forward. Then I go with her. You might not come back, Alzik warned. Jamal met Illyra's eyes. I didn't come here to leave her. She squeezed his hand. Then we go. Together.
The stairway was not made by hands. It spiraled down from beneath the tower like a rib cage of stone and root, carved from the bones of the earth itself. No torch could burn here. Only Illyra's touch lit the way, her fingertips glowing with the same quiet fire that had first burned in her eyes. Jamal followed closely behind her, one hand gripping a vine-wrapped railing, the other never straying far from the obsidian dagger Alzik had handed him before their descent. A gift from the forest, the archivist had said, forged when the first pact was broken. It can cut through what lives beneath, but only once. How comforting, Jamal had muttered. Now, with the tunnel closing around them like the throat of some enormous beast, that warning echoed louder. How far down does this go? He asked, voice bouncing strangely along the roots. Illyra didn't look back. Far enough that time forgets you. They passed a wall covered in handprints, not painted, but scorched into the stone. Hundreds of them, all small, all reaching upwards. Don't stop to touch them, Illyra said quietly. He didn't ask why. After what felt like hours, the stairway gave way to a wide cavern, a space so vast it swallowed sound. At its center was a pit, not just a hole, but a wound in the world. Roots coiled around it like arteries around a heart, pulsing slowly with pale green light. Jamal approached the edge and looked down. He saw nothing. Not blackness, absence. A void that pulled at the soul. This is the root. Not a root of a tree. The root of all things. Where the first seed was buried, and where the first betrayal bled. Jamal turned to her. What do we do? You wait. He shook his head. No. You must, she said. This part is only for me. If you follow, the root will reject us both. He looked at her, jaw clenched. You said we'd go together. She touched his face gently. We will. Just not all at once.
Before he could argue again, she stepped to the edge and began to sing. The sound was not hers alone. The cavern picked it up, twisted it, deepened it. It became a chant older than any language, a vibration that made the stones weep sap and the air smell like thunder. Then she stepped into the void and vanished. Jamal gasped, but the wind caught him, held him back from leaping after her. The cavern itself pushed him away. Then, silence. Nothing but the echo of his heartbeat. For what could have been minutes or days, he waited. Then the cavern shook. A scream, but not human. A sound like thousands of insects hissing in unison, layered with grinding stone and wailing wind. And then a light erupted from the pit. Green, then white, then black. The roots twisted violently and began to wither. And from the darkness, something rose. Not Illyra. Not yet. It was a figure made of bark and bone, half-shaped like a man, half-shaped like a throne. Antlers of jagged obsidian sprouted from its head, and where its heart should be, a hollow burned with shifting fire. Its voice was not sound. It was hunger given voice. She touched the seed. Jamal stepped back, dagger drawn. She bled into the root. She called me by name, and now... It turned toward him. So will you. Jamal raised the dagger, and the figure smiled. Cut me. See if I do not bleed you back. Then, a crack in the darkness. A beam of golden light pierced the cavern like a spear, and with it, Illyra. Floating upward, her body wrapped in a lattice of living vines, her eyes no longer gold, but white-hot like stars. Her voice rang like a bell inside Jamal's chest. Enough! The figure recoiled. She descended slowly, until her feet touched the stone beside Jamal. He reached for her, but hesitated. Illyra. She looked at him, smiled, and spoke. Softly, I am not only her anymore. Then she turned to the being and raised her hand. You are not the first, you are not the last, but you will be still. The creature hissed and lunged, but before it could reach her, the vines around her flared with radiant fire. And it burned. Not just the creature, but its name, its shape, its presence, erased. Jamal shielded his eyes. When he looked again, nothing remained but the dagger in his hand and Illyra, swaying on her feet. He caught her before she fell. She looked up at him. Jamal, she whispered. It's not over. I saw, beyond the forest, beyond the world, there are others, like Ireth Kale, sleeping. He held her tighter. Then we'll wake them together. Or stop them, whatever it takes. She smiled faintly, and the root was silent again.
By the time Jamal and Illyra emerged from the root, the sky had changed. It was still blue, still bright, but quieter, as if the world were holding its breath. Alzek stood at the edge of the tower's inner courtyard, robes singed, eyes wide. You lived, he breathed. Jamal nodded, supporting Illyra's weight. She was awake, but barely, her skin luminous, her breath slow and deep, like the pull of tide water. She didn't just survive, Jamal said. She became. The archivist lowered his head. Then it has begun. Jamal looked around. The forest had stopped moving, but not retreated. Its twisted roots still coiled along the village outskirts like patient snakes. Every tree had turned slightly, facing toward the tower, toward her. "They're watching," he muttered. "No," Illyra whispered. "They're waiting." Jamal helped her into the inner sanctum. The others, a handful of the archivists, a few forest guardians, gathered in a silent circle. No one spoke. Illyra sat upright. Her eyes no longer glowed, but the echo of that starlight shimmered just beneath the surface. "I went deep," she said quietly, "beyond the seed, beyond Ireth Kael. There was something older, not evil, not cruel, but wounded, abandoned. The forest was grown to cover it, a prison built by its own children." Alzek stiffened. "You mean the elders?" "Yes," she said, "the ones who came before. They planted the Codex as a lock, not a book. We just forgot how to read the warnings." Jamal stepped forward. "Then what is Ireth Kael? A prisoner? A remnant?" Illyra looked at him. "Ireth Kael was the warden, and the last to fall." The room went still. "So," Alzek said at last, "what do we do now?" Illyra looked down at her hands. Vines still curled faintly along her wrists, pulsing softly. "We restore the balance, but not by force, not by cutting down trees or burying truths. We remember, we teach, we bring the forest and the people back into communion." Alzek frowned. "You mean peace?" "I mean reconnection," she said. "If the forest remembers pain, then we teach it kindness again." Jamal shook his head. "That won't be easy. They don't trust us." She touched his arm. "Then we start with what we do trust." She walked to the balcony and faced the trees. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the canopy. She raised her arms, and in a voice as old as the first seed, she sang. Not in human words, not in forest tongue, but in the language of the in-between, the song of healing, of welcome. And the forest answered, gently. Leaves rustled, roots receded. A breeze carried a single petal to her palm. The forest remembered her, and it was willing to try. Jamal stood beside her, watching the horizon. "Do you think it'll work?" he asked. She smiled. "It already is."
The dawn came with silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of waiting, of reverence. Jamal stood at the edge of the glade, watching as the first villagers emerged from their homes. Men, women, children. Some wore red scarves, a symbol of mourning. Others carried candles or handfuls of earth. All bore the weight of uncertainty in their eyes. On the other side of the glade, the forest had parted. For the first time in living memory, the trees stepped back, revealing a path, not carved, not forced, but offered. It shimmered faintly, lined with flowers that hadn't bloomed in generations. Illyra stood in the center, barefoot, her hair braided with vines and copper thread. Her skin glowed faintly, the same inner light that had once threatened to consume her, now pulsing gently, like a heartbeat aligned with the world. Beside her, Jamal felt both grounded and weightless. He didn't fully understand what had changed inside her, or inside himself, but he knew they were no longer outsiders here. They were bridges, and today they would cross. Alzek raised the old codex, its pages now unsealed and breathing with slow, papery life. "Let the communion begin," he said, voice shaking. Illyra took a step forward. The forest responded with a murmur of wind and birdsong. 1,000 leaves turned at once. Jamal followed. Then a child stepped from the villager's side, a little girl with a faded dress and solemn eyes. She crossed the space between village and forest, her small hand reaching out. Illyra knelt. Their palms met. A shock of green light erupted, not harsh, warm, radiant. It spread across the glade like morning sun. One by one, the villagers followed. Not all, not yet. But enough. Enough to begin again. As the ritual deepened and voices from both sides lifted in song, Jamal felt a tug at his mind. Not from Illyra, not from the forest, but from beneath. A memory he didn't recognize. He staggered slightly. Illyra caught him, her eyes narrowing in concern. "What is it?" she whispered. I saw something. A dream. No, a memory. But not mine. Not exactly." He closed his eyes. In his mind, a vision. A man like him, dark skin, amber eyes, standing in this same forest centuries ago, holding the same dagger Jamal had used to face Irith-Kale. Beside him, a woman who looked almost exactly like Illyra, not the same, but mirrored. "They've done this before," he murmured. "Us, or people like us." Illyra nodded slowly. "The forest doesn't forget. It remembers love, too." He turned to her. "Then maybe this isn't the end of a story." She smiled, golden light curling in her eyes. "No, it's the beginning of one we've been telling for lifetimes." The wind picked up, the vines shifted, the forest breathed. And Jamal, once a lost stranger in foreign woods, now stood hand in hand with a wife born of root and memory at the heart of a new world being reborn.